There comes a point in every person's life when fear quietly slips in and starts whispering doubts. It shows up in moments of loss, in times of waiting, or when the path ahead looks uncertain. Fear says, what if you fail? What if you're not strong enough? What if things never change? And before we know it, we start carrying the weight of these thoughts, and they begin to shape how we live, how we love, and how we hope. But in the middle of that heavy silence, there is a voice much more powerful than fear. It is the voice of God gently saying, trust me, and fear will leave you. Trusting God doesn't mean you'll never feel afraid. It means you now have a choice to believe that even in your weakness, you are being held by a strength greater than your own. It means choosing peace when the world offers panic. It means walking forward even when the road is unclear, because your trust is not in the path, it's in the one who guides you through it. Fear may come knocking, but faith opens the door and says, God is already here. Fear feeds on the unknown. It wants to control the future by making you worry about it endlessly. But God reminds us that the future is already written in His wisdom. When you shift your focus from what if to even if, your heart starts to change. Even if things go wrong, God will be with me. Even if I don't have all the answers, He does. Even if I'm scared, I can still choose trust. That's where fear begins to lose its grip. Trust is not just a feeling, it's a decision. It's the quiet surrender that says, I don't know what's coming next, but I know who's with me. That trust becomes a light in the darkness, a whisper of peace in the middle of chaos, and slowly, something incredible happens. Fear begins to fade. Not because the world changed, but because your heart did. So if you are tired of being weighed down by fear, stop fighting it with your own strength. Instead, place that fear in God's hands and trust Him fully. You'll find that where trust grows, fear cannot stay. Because God's voice is always louder than your fears. It just takes faith to listen. True trust in God begins when we let go of the illusion that we control everything. In life, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that we must handle every detail on our own. We plan, we prepare, and we try to foresee every possible outcome, often thinking that the burden of control is solely on our shoulders. This mindset can lead to anxiety, worry, and fear, because no matter how much we plan, life is unpredictable. We can't control everything, and when things don't go as expected, fear begins to creep in. Trusting God means acknowledging that control isn't ours to hold. It's about recognizing that there is a higher power guiding us and that we can't possibly foresee all that is ahead. Trust starts when we release the need to control every aspect of our lives and instead lean on God's wisdom and timing. It's about understanding that God has a plan for us even when the details aren't clear, and that His plan is always better than ours. This surrendering to the divine will is an act of faith that brings peace because it lifts the burden of trying to handle everything ourselves. When we trust in God, we embrace the reality that we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to know what will happen tomorrow or how we will overcome every challenge. Trust allows us to step back, breathe, and let go of the need to control things. Instead of being driven by fear and uncertainty, we are guided by faith, knowing that God is always in control and we are held safely in His hand. The moment we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives, we create space for trust to grow. And with it, the fear that once dominated our thoughts begins to fade away. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but faith anchors the heart in divine certainty. The human experience is often shaped by uncertainty about the future, about relationships, about our purpose. In these moments of doubt, fear takes root and begins to influence our thoughts and decisions. Fear asks questions like, what if things don't work out? Or what if I fail? And as these thoughts spiral, they grow stronger, feeding on the unknown. The more uncertain we feel, the more fear takes hold, causing anxiety and distress. But faith operates differently. While fear flourishes in uncertainty, faith steps in as a steady anchor. When we trust God, we're not left to navigate through life's uncertainties alone. Instead, Faith gives us the assurance that no matter how unknown or unclear the future seems, God has already prepared the way for us. It's the belief that even in the midst of chaos, God is working all things together for our good. Faith doesn't ask for a clear path with no obstacles, but rather it gives us the confidence to walk forward with God, even when the path is foggy or difficult to see. Faith offers divine certainty in moments when fear and uncertainty try to overwhelm us. It assures us that we are never alone, that God's presence goes before us, guiding us even when we can't fully see what lies ahead. In trusting Him, we gain peace because we understand that our future is not in our hands alone, but in the hands of a loving and all-knowing Creator. Faith, in essence, is the confidence that God's plan is greater than our own understanding. Even when life doesn't unfold the way we expect or desire, faith tells us that God's purpose is unfolding perfectly. Rather than allowing uncertainty to breed fear, we let our faith anchor us to the truth that God holds the future, and with Him, we can face anything. Through this unwavering trust, fear loses its power and peace begins to take root. It's this peace that comes from knowing that even in times of uncertainty, we are safe in God's hands. When the heart is filled with trust, fear has no room to stay. The way we respond to life's challenges, uncertainties, and difficulties is deeply tied to the state of our hearts. If our hearts are filled with fear, it's because we are holding on to doubts and insecurities, often imagining the worst outcomes or feeling inadequate to handle what lies ahead. Fear makes us focus on what we can't control, amplifying our anxiety and concern. However, when our hearts are filled with trust in God, everything changes. Trust in God is not just an intellectual understanding. It is a deep, heartfelt conviction that God is in control, that He knows what's best for us, and that He is always there, ready to guide us through whatever comes our way. When we truly trust in His wisdom and His plan, the weight of fear begins to lift. We no longer feel the need to constantly worry or anticipate the worst because we know that God is leading us with love and care. This trust brings a sense of security that fear cannot penetrate. It calms the heart, allowing it to rest in the knowledge that no matter the challenges or obstacles, we are not alone. Fear may try to creep in, but when our hearts are anchored in trust, it has no place to take root. Trust in God is like a protective shield, covering our hearts from the destructive power of fear. It gives us the courage to face life with hope because we believe that everything, even the difficulties, is part of God's greater plan for our lives. When we trust in God fully, fear cannot dictate our actions or thoughts. We are no longer paralyzed by uncertainty or consumed by worry. Instead, we are free to move forward, confident that God is with us every step of the way. Trust doesn't mean that we are never afraid, but it means that we don't let fear control us. It means we choose to move through fear, knowing that God's presence is enough to carry us through anything. And in doing so, we experience a deep sense of peace and calm that fear simply cannot overshadow. God's promises are not empty. They are a shelter for every trembling soul. Throughout our lives, we often encounter moments of fear, doubt, and uncertainty. In those moments, we long for a source of strength, something that can give us comfort and assurance that everything will be okay. This is where the promises of God come into play. Unlike human promises, which can sometimes be broken or left unfulfilled, God's promises are always certain and reliable. The beauty of God's promises lies in their nature. They are not just words to be read or heard, but they are truths meant to anchor our souls in times of trial. When God promises us that He is with us, that He will never forsake us, or that He will make a way when there seems to be no way, these are not empty words, they are assurances that carry weight and power. When we trust in His promises, we are reminded that no matter what we face, we are never alone. His promises are a constant reminder that there is always hope, no matter how dark the situation may seem. For the trembling soul, God's promises serve as a refuge. In times of distress, we can turn to His words and find comfort. When fear threatens to overwhelm us, we can remind ourselves that God's promises are true. And in doing so, we find peace and strength to continue moving forward. It's like finding shelter from a storm. His promises offer us a safe haven where we can rest and be assured that we are protected. This is the power of trust. When we trust in God's promises, fear fades away because we know that He has already provided for our needs. We may not always understand the circumstances, but we can always trust that His promises hold the key to peace. In every season of life, God's promises remain steadfast, and in them we find the strength to face anything with faith and courage. Trust isn't weakness, it's the strongest choice you can make when everything else is shaking. In a world that often emphasizes self-reliance and control, trusting in God may seem counterintuitive or even weak. People are often taught to trust in their own abilities, resources, and understanding. But the truth is, choosing to trust in God is one of the most powerful decisions you can make, especially when circumstances are beyond your control. When everything around you is uncertain, when life feels like it's falling apart, when plans don't go the way you hoped, or when fear begins to overwhelm, trusting God is not a sign of weakness. It is a declaration of strength. Trusting in God means acknowledging that you don't have to carry the weight of the world alone. It's realizing that you are not the sole architect of your life and that it's okay to surrender control to a higher power that is far more capable, loving, and wise than you could ever be. In moments of difficulty, trusting God requires courage. It takes strength to release your need for control and place your full confidence in someone you cannot always see or fully understand. Trusting God means choosing faith over fear, believing in His plan even when the road ahead seems unclear. It means walking forward even when you're uncertain of the outcome, because you know that God is walking with you every step of the way. The true strength of trust is not in how much you can control, but in your ability to let go of the need to control everything. It's recognizing that there's a peace in surrendering to God's will, because His wisdom and love will always lead you to the right place, even if it doesn't match your expectations. Trusting God is the foundation of inner peace, because it frees you from the weight of worry and fear and empowers you to face life's challenges with resilience. So don't let the world tell you that trusting God is a sign of weakness. It is the strongest, most empowering choice you can make, especially in the midst of chaos. By trusting in God, you draw on the ultimate source of strength and find the courage to face anything that comes your way. Letting go of fear is not about pretending it doesn't exist. It's about replacing it with faith so deep that fear loses its power. Fear is a natural part of life. It shows up when things are uncertain, when we feel vulnerable, or when the future seems dark. But the goal isn't to deny that fear exists. The real transformation happens when we choose not to let fear control us. Instead of letting fear speak louder, we let faith take its place. Faith doesn't remove every problem, but it changes how we face them. When we have deep faith in God, we begin to see fear in a different light. It no longer becomes a wall that blocks us. It becomes a reminder to lean harder on God. Faith reminds us that we are not facing anything alone. God is with us, guiding us, strengthening us, and working things out in ways we may not yet see. That truth helps quiet the voice of fear. The process of replacing fear with faith is a daily choice. It's in the moments when anxiety creeps in and we decide to pray instead of panic. It's when we feel unsure and choose to say, "I trust you, God," even if our emotions are still unsettled. Over time, that faith becomes stronger than the fear. It doesn't mean the situation always changes, but it does mean our hearts change. And when the heart is rooted in faith, fear starts to lose its grip. Letting go of fear doesn't mean we stop feeling. It means we choose to feel peace instead of panic, calm instead of chaos. Faith gives us the ability to stand firm, even when the ground around us feels shaky. That's what makes faith powerful. It's not built on perfect circumstances. It's built on trust in a perfect God. So as fear rises, let faith rise higher. Let your trust in God become so steady that fear cannot shake you. That is where true peace lives, not in the absence of fear, but in the quiet, steady confidence that no matter what happens, God is still in control. In the end, trusting God is not just a comfort, it's a way of living. It's the decision to walk forward even when the path is unclear, to breathe deeply even when anxiety tries to choke us, and to believe in a greater purpose even when life feels heavy. Fear may knock at your door, but you don't have to let it in. When your heart is anchored in faith, fear loses its power over you. God's invitation has always been simple yet powerful. Trust me. He doesn't promise a life without challenges, but he does promise his presence through every trial. That presence changes everything. It turns confusion into clarity, pain into growth, and fear into peace. When we truly let go and surrender to him, we don't just find rest, we find freedom. Freedom from the chains of doubt, from the weight of worry, from the storm of fear. So let this be the reminder your soul needed today. You don't have to carry everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. You simply have to trust. Trust that you are not alone. Trust that God sees, hears, and cares. And when fear returns, as it often does, remember, you are stronger than it. Because the one who holds your heart is greater than anything you fear. Let your trust in God be your peace, your shield, and your light. Because when you trust him fully, fear has no place left to hide.